everybody, and welcome to The Pursuit, a podcast produced by the Junior Board of the Chicago Midwest chapter of the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences, otherwise known as NATAS. We are a group of emerging media professionals seeking insight from leaders in our fields. I'm Jenny Weaver, and I'm currently working as a writer and producer in Chicago, and I'm also your host for this episode. Today, I'm interviewing Emily Reilly, a TV news reporter for WBAY Channel 2 in Green Bay, Wisconsin. And she's not only a wonderful person, but also someone who entered the industry not too long ago and has really gotten her foot in the door. So I think a lot of people trying to break in will benefit from hearing her story and perspective.
It's good to see you.
Oh, yes, it's so good to see you. We haven't seen each other since Oshkosh.
Since Oshkosh, since the EAA. That was so fun that I got to run into you.
My dad is a big aviator guy, and we went to the Oshkosh Plane Festival, and Emily was there reporting on it, and she got to come interview my dad, and it was a really fun experience.
He was great. He's an awesome pilot, so that was very fun. It was a good time.
He has 3 older sisters, and I sent them the link, and they were like, "Oh, Tommy's on TV."
That's wonderful. That was such a good day. That's awesome.
you made my family's day with that. So yeah, thank you for doing that and letting us be on TV.
So fun.
So obviously, you interviewed my dad because you work as a TV news reporter. So just before we get into anything else, I wanted to talk about what was the moment you knew you wanted to pursue journalism, and then specifically going into television news reporting.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of didn't really know what I wanted to do for a while, obviously, as a lot of people are in that position. And then in college, I thought I really wanted to do like TV writing for a little bit and comedy, and I was film. I was so into that, and I double majored in journalism and film, and I thought I was going to really, really like film more, but I wound up liking just the writing aspect of news, and just that I felt like there was something so exciting about actually interviewing people who are in charge and holding them accountable, and that was just so encouraging and cool. And film is awesome, and the cool part is there's elements of film in TV news reporting, so you can kind of edit and shoot if you're in that position. So I think just in college it was just a matter of the classes that I took that made me I felt more encouraged in the journalism classes, and it just was fun.
Yeah, that's awesome, and you're really good at it. So
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So it's funny you mentioned being into film and comedy, because that's actually how we met. Is we were on a sketch team together in college.
Right.
So obviously you have that background in comedy. Would you say that background in performing sketch and stand-up and writing comedy has helped you with presenting on television and writing news?
Absolutely, it has. Absolutely. And I feel like you might be able to attest to this too, but it is just the scariest thing you could ever do, and then you do it, and then it's not scary at all. Doing comedy that makes you feel like, okay, I can be in front of people, and it's all, most of the time stand-up comedy, it's all pre-written. At least that's what our sort of gig was. And so a lot of news, you pre-write it. Obviously you check all your boxes before, and it's kind of from a script, so that does help us just delivery wise, not being afraid of delivering a message to people.
Are you always doing pre-tape segments, or are you ever reporting live out on the field? And how does that differ?
Totally a good mix of both. And it really kind of depends on the day. I'd say it's half and half. So sometimes it's pre-recorded stuff. Like today, I did a story about a completely electric fire truck, and it was all pre-recorded, and I shot everything, and it was on at 6, and I was here sitting at home at 6. So that's kind of nice. You can kind of have it all vetted out. You can really lay out all the information, and then sometimes tomorrow, Thursday, I'll probably be reporting live because we don't have as many reporters that day. So yeah, it's a toss-up.
It's really cool that you do a story that morning and you get to watch it that night. It's just the cycle of turnover with news. I feel like it's got to be really satisfying.
It's so fast. It is so fast, and that is it's almost overwhelming. It is overwhelming. Sometimes that's the exciting part. It's new, you're on it right away, and then there's some days where you're I can't keep up with this. Oh my goodness, what's going on?
I bet. Yeah, it's really dependent on the state of the world, which right now I can't imagine what being a reporter must be like in today's world. But
especially those international reporters, people that are in the parts of the world where there's a lot going on and it's just ridiculous.
You're never really off the job, I guess, if you're in a area. How do you just report on that kind of devastation and then say, okay, I'm clocking out?
Yeah, there's certain stories. It's like you try not to take it home with you, but of course you do.
Yeah, I imagine it like you wake up the next day to go to work and it's still going to be lingering with you. Those
Yeah,
heavier.
there was, one story like that I did where this boy, he's like roughly my age, and his parents got hit by a drunk driver, and his mother was in critical condition, and his dad died in the car crash, and he was left with like nothing for expenses. And it was, we were talking about what that incident was like for him, obviously traumatic, and it was just a terrible, terrible story. And it's like coming home, you don't get over it. You think about it for a long time, and it's like even worse for that person going through it. And then you sit down next to them and talk to them at the worst, lowest point in their life.
How often are the stories you're reporting on stuff like that, and how often is it more lighthearted or lower stakes stories?
That's a good question. Yeah, I would say 60% of the time I go on harder stories. And then like 40% of the time it's slightly more featurey, or it really just kind of depends on the lineup. Like a few months ago, I was on hard news, like homicides and
Jeez.
hard stories like that, for just one after the other. And now, oh, we got a few more like reporters who are more experienced in that area. Now I'm, might do more features because I'm kind of, brand new. It's my first year in the industry. So I go where they put me. And
Yeah.
so, yeah, it really just depends, but I'd say it's split up. I do a little bit more harder news because that's what they always like to put their reporters on, but I get a good amount of features, which is exciting because features are my favorite.
Would Oshkosh be considered a feature?
Absolutely. And that was so fun. Yes.
It was so fun.
Doing the EAA where people are just enjoying themselves, and there's memorials and it's history and it's, aircraft. It's so cool. But a lot of the times, especially the happier ones, the feature ones, it's just nice. Once you put it together, it's like a puzzle. You write the words in the way you want to paint the story and put it together. It's done, and you have something you're proud of.
That's really cool. It reminds me of, I feel like I'm just going to keep tying everything back to comedy.
No,
but
but that's your world. That's what
yeah, they
so
say
you can absolutely.
they say that the best jokes already exist, and when you're writing you're just looking for them, and I feel like maybe a really good news story could be the same way.
Absolutely. And you just find those connections.
Working as a reporter, your job is never the same because every story is different, but what does your day-to-day life look like? Are you always in the studio, out on the field? Is it a 9 to 5? Like, kind of walk me through that.
Yeah, so technically my schedule is 9 to 5, Monday through Friday. And that's a very, very lucky schedule in the TV news industry, especially getting into it. So usually day to day, either I'll have a story that's already assigned to me by the assignment manager or my bosses, or I'll have a story that I just have to pitch and just kind of see after we have our 9:30 a.m. meeting. So whatever that story is, it's then distinguished if I get a photographer, and then I'll do live shots later that day. Or like today, I'm recording it myself. I go out with my equipment and I edit it myself. I ask the questions, I come back and I write it. So then once whatever it is, you go out, you get your interviews. It was today, for example, it was for a completely electric fire truck, which they're kind of bringing into different fire stations across
That's
the
so
US.
cool.
I got to do like a ride along. I took my camera in and was getting footage of the fire chief who was talking about it, the engineer who helped make it. Got 2 good interviews. That's usually what you need. Good B-roll. I did a stand-up shot where that's where it's pre-recorded. So you stand up, say a sentence, a line or two that you'll have in your package. Later, come back to the studio. Depends on what your deadline is, how much time you have. You log it, so you transcribe everything that your interviews are saying. After that, you can kind of gauge, what shows you're in, how much do I have to write. Today I was in 2 shows, so I wrote for the 4 p.m., the 6 p.m., wrote it, got it approved, edited all the footage that I shot, and then wrote another little story for the morning and put it on the web. And that was actually, it was a fun day. I got to do something cool, but there's some days where I'll be an hour away from where I live, and I'll be doing live shots in the 4:30, 5, and 6 p.m. and I won't get home till 7:30, or it'll be a super late night. So it really just depends. The days can look so different But I do feel lucky that I have a 9 to 5 schedule and it loosely follows on that. But it is exciting. There's something going on every day that you get to learn about, and you get to become that person for a day, whether it's like a firefighter, or whether you're following up on an investigation or doing something brand new. It's exciting. You get to kind of meet a lot of people and learn a lot of things.
It's kind of like being an actor with job stability, it sounds like.
In a way. A little bit with job stability.
Yeah. It's got to be stressful with some of those turnarounds.
Oh, yes. Don't even get me started. There's some days where you get really close to not making it. And that's difficult. That is always so scary.
Is there like a worst memory that comes to mind with like a tight turnaround?
Yes. It was the only time I did not make slot. And for some reporters, it depends. If you're not good at time management, there's some reporters that miss slot a lot, and that's not a good thing. That's something, it's like you just got to manage your time, even if it's hard. Even if you're like, this isn't my best story that I can write, I still need to just get it in on time, because that's like the most important. That and getting it right is the most important. There was one day where I had a story I was sent to an hour and 20 minutes away, and I was sent at around noon, and then I was in the 4 p.m. show, and I didn't have a photographer, and so it felt like I was just from the get-go not going to get back on time. And so I just called them like as soon as I got my interview coming back a little bit before the 4 p.m. show, while I was like speeding down the highway. I was like, I can't do this. And that was, I think, the best thing that you have to do in that time is just be honest about your timeline, about what you can do, and just express that to those who are in charge, how you're doing throughout the day. That was one of my first weeks there, and it was just I don't think, we communicated on like how far away the place was that I had to go and interview. And so that happened. But once it happens, you learn from it, you move on. That was the worst memory. I'll never forget it. But yeah, definitely can be an obstacle for people, especially if you have time management issues.
I bet. Or if there's traffic, or like if anything goes wrong, it could.
Right. There was another time there was traffic. So my photographer and I had to jump out of the car, park at a gas station, and go live at the gas station. So it really is just, you got to just, figure it out. It's so stressful, but sometimes, but
that's like, those are where the fun memories are. I feel like problem solving. You're like, hey, remember that time we reported at a gas station? Like,
yeah, in the middle of nowhere, and we were so close to making it.
Yeah. Maybe I shouldn't like romanticize it, but
no, I will probably in a couple of years. But oh my gosh, right afterwards, you're like, oh my gosh.
I imagine your bosses, as long as you give them enough of a heads up, they can't be too upset, because if it's out of your control, it's out of your control.
Exactly. And if you just communicate and be like, hey, this is where I'm at. This is what I have now. This is how far of a drive I am. Especially if you have a photographer working with you, you can kind of all like coordinate on what is going to work and what isn't.
So the next topic I wanted to talk about was the WGA and SAG strikes. Obviously, this summer has been huge for the film and scripted side of the industry, but I was wondering, have these strikes impacted news at all? Has it made your field more competitive? Has it created more opportunity? Are they just completely unrelated? Because I know there's a lot of overlap between the two.
Some overlap. It hasn't directly affected me, I'll say that. But in certain ways, such as like our affiliate, ABC is our affiliate. So you turn on the channel 2 ABC, that's us. There's shows, especially I think ABC Comedy, that have gone on strike. And that was really cool to see that, just that they fought for, certain standards that they weren't getting before, and to see that it worked. And it does affect the TV industry, because our affiliate ABC has people in Hollywood that are writing for shows that play on our channel. When I'm sitting there at my desk, it doesn't maybe directly impact like what I do each day, but it impacts me for sure. It's our affiliate. That's our channel.
Do you think news will ever be switched over to streaming if cable really just like collapses?
That's a good question. The news industry, TV news specifically, is in a weird spot right now. A lot of people are leaving the field, and it's sort of declining in its growth because more people have simply switched to digital, to social media. That's just the way of life. there's not a lot of people flipping on their TV and watching their local news. It's just not the same as it was. And that's how technology changes and evolves.
Yeah.
I don't think there'd be a strike anytime soon. I think with sort of decreasing flows of money into companies for TV news stations, it certainly has led to changes in like benefits and salaries and jumbling around job titles for sure. But I think, station by station, that's where it matters. If your station isn't treating you fairly, you could go to another station and they'll probably treat you fairly. So it's a little different, I'd say, from like contracted TV writers in that way. But I do think what you said, how it would change with streaming, that's a tough question, because live TV, I know some streaming services do live streaming. Like I think Hulu does it. So I think in those places it would work, but I couldn't see it ever coming to Netflix, because how would you, get it all ready to go in advance when, oh, this happened yesterday. Why are we watching this? This happened yesterday. The whole point of news is that it's right now. And I think it's always, no matter what format it's in, it's going to be relevant. People need to know what's going on. That's always, it's never going to die. People have their information. It's just the platform of which they want to watch it or listen to it or read it. It really, there's newspapers, radios, podcasts, websites, blogs, vlogs, TV news, whatever it is, it ebbs and it flows and it changes. And, I'm excited and nervous to see what happens with the TV news industry. I think it's been very, very crucial in times where there's been, misinformation spreading vastly on certain social media sites, and where there's, Facebook posts, people don't know if it's true, if it's right, it was just created by someone, it was not vetted, whatever it is. There's sort of a nice feeling that local news is a person going out and getting it for you, and a person trying their best to deliver what they see and they hear. There's something familiar about it.
It's gonna be really,
because it's like, it's very just grounding. It's what keeps the world spinning.
So I know you mentioned earlier that because the industry is shifting, a lot of people are leaving TV news. And I know back when we were little babies in college, you wanted to be an international reporter. Does that still a dream you have, or is TV news, you think, where you want to be forever? How do you think ambition continues as you age, and how do you personally foster it?
Yeah, that's a good question. Oh my
It's
gosh.
kind of a lot of questions I just threw at you at once. So
okay. It's interesting to think about. When we were in college, I remember I kind of was just sort of aimlessly excited about TV news, and I knew I international events were exciting to me, and I really liked that idea. I think now that I'm in it, my perspective has changed tenfold. I totally respect and commend the people that are going out and traveling, across the world and on a regular basis, just in a danger zone, risking their lives to report the news. I think as I've done it, I've leaned a little bit more towards, I love feature pieces. I love getting to, sit down and talk with a person and like writing about their life or something that they've been through, or just something like that. I'm starting to lean a little bit more towards, and it's cool because as you do it, you can find what you like, what you don't. And, I think the last thing I want to do when I walk into work is sit, parse through a really, really long court case and think about a homicide, and it has to happen. Like that has to be reported. But what I've learned is I really like getting to do exciting stories where, oh, this man had like 4 heart transplants and he's running a marathon, like stories like that, where you can like make it a little story. It's exciting. You can shoot really cool footage for it. It's like your own presentation of this cool story, and you get to share it with the world. And I think I've always just like gravitated more towards stories like that. So now over time, I've just been leaning more towards that. And what was the other question you said? How do you
think ambition continues as you age, and how do you foster it, and like what drives you with news?
Yeah, I'm like still totally looking for that answer. Truly, it's hard to not get burnt out, especially when that transition from college to the workforce is so brutal
Yeah.
sometimes, depending on what, your life was in college and your life is in the workforce. But it can just be a big change, and that's hard. And right now, what I've learned is just trying my best to find work-life balance, and just trying to come into work every day thinking that it's going to be a good day and trying to do my very best. Just, fostering ambition, just wanting to do the absolute best you can, because the best work comes out of encouragement and being excited to do something and being excited to bring new ideas and just thinking about a million ways you can dive into it and already wanting to start writing it and already wanting to start getting into it, versus out of fear where you're like, I need to come up with ideas, otherwise I'm going to get yelled at, or I need to do this, or it's out of fear. It's out of a place of like, I just need to get this done. And you can always tell that difference. You want to do something because you're excited to do it and you're drawn to do it. And that can be so hard to find. But if you make time for yourself and also try to find enough time to like push yourself at work or whatever it is you're doing, that does help. But that's something I'm still trying to figure out, truly.
Yeah. I mean, you're young, you're figuring it out.
Oh
I
my
mean, I
gosh.
think there is something to be said, though. You mentioned the feature stories and how you're really gravitating towards those. And I feel like with the world being what it is today, obviously there's so many things wrong, so many human rights issues, and so much like negative stories out there that need to be talked about. Obviously, we can't just ignore those problems, but I think it's comparing apples to oranges and having those like positive stories that are more intimate and personal about individual people. I think that helps bring a bit of like hope and levity to people that they might really need in their lives right now. So I think I just want to say like I commend you on wanting to do those kind of stories, because I feel like it's really easy to be like, oh, who cares about a donut shop that's like giving away donuts to these people at a church or whatever. But it's like maybe people really want to hear a story like that after hearing about people dying all the time. I think there's room for both in the newsroom. So
Yeah. No, and I think it's cool because sometimes you can highlight certain things in the community and, you highlight, yeah, whatever it is. There was actually that when you said that, it made me think of a story I did. It was a bakery that burned down and then they rebuilt, and it was their grand reopening, and they'd been open for like decades, and they were so, so sad when it burned down. And it was so cool because so many people came out to support them from the community, and they're like, I used to go here when I was little, and it was a big deal to um a lot of people. And it's just those like heartwarming stories. You need to see that, otherwise, you know why do you want to watch just an hour of death and homicide and
yeah,
horrible, horrible things? That has to be said. Those have to be
yeah,
told. Obviously we have to know about it, but there's also good things going on. There's good news and there's bad news.
yeah. I think finding the balance is really important. And I know you talked about burnout earlier. Does like those happier stories, does that definitely help when
Oh,
you're feeling
absolutely. I think that helps a lot, especially when I'm given a little bit more room to be creative. I think it's so much more exciting when, I'm not just like punching the clock, just trying to get it done, just trying to get the interview in because it's go, 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 get the information, call the PIO. That can be a little draining. It can be exhilarating, but draining. Um, I think when you have time, I have one photographer I always work with who tries to make my live shots and stand-up shots as fun and exciting as possible. And I don't know why we always do that when we're working with each other, but I went to a polka festival and I did my live shot while I was polka dancing. And that was
that's
so funny and crazy because we were like, didn't know it was actually going to work. I didn't know if I was going to hear the cue because the music was so loud. I was screaming over the music, but it worked. It was so fun.
that's
And I got to kind of push the boundary that day. And, it felt like I had accomplished something. And I like went home feeling proud and excited. And, just the other week we did one where we were talking about the fall leaves, and it was the fall leaf report, the color leaf report. And right before our live shot, we had 5 minutes. So we were making a giant pile of leaves for me to sit in. And it was just the two of us in this park pushing these leaves together in this giant pile. And then I was sitting in it and I went live from a pile of leaves. So it was exciting. Those kind of things make me feel like it's an adventure, and every day's like a little adventure. It's also like you can be collaborative sometimes when you have a photographer, or when you're kind of passing the torch on to another reporter who's following up on a story. You can collaborate, and you can ask anchors and other reporters who are there for ideas about what they do in the situation if you're stuck. And that makes it so much better. And you just feel better. And you feel like you're not in it alone, because it can be isolating when you're covering something and you have no idea what it's about and you barely learned anything about it. It's so scary and intimidating, but then you just ask for help, and you should never be afraid to ask for help. And anchors and reporters who have been reporting for years, they love to, like, most of them, 99% of them love to help new reporters and guide them through something. They feel like they can be helpful, and I think they're also flattered to be asked for help in a way, like that you trust them,
yeah,
and that you respect them. So it's, it really helps a lot, and it's kind of create that bond. You learn from someone who's been doing it for years. It's a win-win. It's great.
yeah. It's like what's the thing they always say in the industry? Like, just ask someone if you can get them coffee and ask them for advice, because people will love to
Yes,
help feel
truly.
important.
Yeah, nothing is ever that serious. Like, people are people. No person is ever too important to be talked to.
Especially people starting out in the industry, don't get too caught up in job titles and status. If you want to reach out to someone, write them an email. The worst they can do is not respond or say no. Like, it's okay to ask people to coffee or for advice or send them your resume or whatever. I think
Right.
it can be scary to do that, but especially in something that's competitive, you got to just be willing to put yourself out there.
Right. Rejection therapy. The worst they can do is say no. It's
Rejection
fine.
therapy. I never thought about that in terms of the industry, but that's a really good way of looking at it.
That's another thing I should point out is I have day-to-day rejection therapy.
So how did you get to where you are today? Do you want to just talk through your journey in your
Sure.
career so
Yes.
far?
Of course, of course. Yeah. So DePaul has a really, really good journalism communications program. They've got just great professors. My professors, Rick Brown and Judith McCrae, two incredible professors in communications and journalism. And especially, Rick specifically, he is the TV news guy, and he really just helped with putting together a demo reel. So, I got experience during Good Day DePaul, during classes I took, where we would put together a student run TV news show. So you get kind of a watered down version of it. It's not every single day like it is with this business, but it's a version of it. And so you get that experience being out, interviewing people, putting together packages, and you understand the format more. And then at the end of the year, you put together what's called a demo reel. And in my case, it's all your highlights. It's your best interviews. It's your best stories, what you want news directors to see. I just found, he had this list of news directors' emails and phone numbers, and just crafted an email that said, hey, I'm looking to be an MMJ or reporter. If you have any open positions, I can start this time. This is my education. This is a little bit about me. Let me know if if I can interview or anything. It's just, you craft an email, you link your demo reel so they can see you, they can see your work. I sent it out to about over 100 people. I heard back from some, a lot, way more I didn't hear back from, but I heard back from El Paso. I got a job offer there.
That's cool.
West Virginia, they flew me out to an interview, and I got offered a job there. There was another station in Iowa. There was one in California, and they're all kind of mid-sized. So you won't really, go to a big city. You have to kind of set your expectations reasonably. And that's hard to do, especially once moving somewhere from Chicago to anywhere that's not a big city is difficult for some people. So it, was just a matter of finding where I wanted to be, what seemed like a good station, people I wanted to work with. And at the time I was kind of putting together all the places I'd interviewed. I'd heard back from Channel 2 in Green Bay. I liked the location because it was kind of close enough to home. They were also ranked #1 in their market. They had some really good anchors and reporters, and it just seemed also like a good pathway if I ever wanted to try to be a reporter in Chicago. It seemed like a good stepping stone because it wasn't too far, and it just kind of all felt right.
I love what you said about just cold emailing people, because I think it's really easy to be like, oh, I applied to 100 jobs. I've done all I can do. But the truth is,
Email them.
Yeah, in this
Find
industry.
find the person who was looking at it and email them and say, hey, Jenna, say like that. They'll see it. And if they don't, or if they never respond to you, or if they respond and say, no way, whatever, move on. But at least they
Yeah.
saw it. Like sometimes Indeed or those websites, it's you just don't know, or you never get a response, or it's automated and
Yeah.
it feels so disconnected. But sometimes if you find that person's, contact information, not in a creepy way, but if you find
No,
their
yeah.
contact
Their
information,
address, their kid's school.
show up at their house.
Yeah. Pick their kids up from baseball practice, walk them home.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know.
Floors for them,
Yeah, literally.
I'm a hard worker. I remember there was one news director I interviewed. This was the El Paso job that I got. I found her email, like I did kind of dig for it, the news director. And I emailed her and she responded. And I was like, it was always so cool when it, out of the 100 whatever that I sent out, when someone responded. And so she was like, can I ask how you found my email address? And then I said, I used my investigative reporter skills to find your email. And
That's amazing.
like she thought it was so funny, and she was like, oh, we'll do a Zoom interview. And she was great. She had they were like co-news directors. There was two people she worked with, but they were a really intense station, and I thought I bombed the interview because I had to do a practice live shot test. I had to do a spelling test. I had to do it was
You
like
had
the
to take
most
a spelling
intense.
test? I'm dyslexic, dude. I would fail.
And I spelled some words wrong. It was like so stressful. And I was like, I remember telling my parents after, I'm like, I did not get it. It was so hard. Lo and behold, these people call me and they're like, you got the job. And I was like, what?
And you were like, actually, no, I don't. But
And then like looking back, I'm like, oh, I would have done fine. I just like literally was just starting out, but like it was so scary to
yes,
begin with. I was like, oh my God, I don't know.
That's crazy.
It was
That's
crazy.
really awesome though.
Yeah, no, but like she thought it was funny. Like people have a sense of humor about it, especially if you're like recent grad, because like it sucks. It sucks when you're 22 and you don't have a job and you just have a degree. It's like,
yeah,
hire me. This is why I spent millions of dollars on you.
literally, like I have this piece of paper. Give me something with it.
Yes, a very expensive piece of paper.
It's a six-figure piece of paper.
Yes. Like, can I please try to pay it off now?
Literally.
Thank you.
What do you think have been the most challenging and best parts of your career so far?
Oh my gosh, that's a good question. Starting with the most challenging. Overall, like we were just talking about, moving to a different city that maybe is completely different from where you had previously lived, which was my case, being from DePaul, being from Chicago. It was hard to move to somewhere that felt like the middle of nowhere. That was my biggest challenge at first. And also just adjusting to working sometimes more than 8 hours a day and trying to manage my life in a completely different schedule. That was so challenging. And then over time, it became less challenging. And then I think the most exciting part, or the best part, I kind of mentioned earlier, just having a new little adventure every day. And you don't sometimes know what you're going to be doing. Like, I don't know what I'm going to be doing tomorrow. I don't have something on the planner yet, but that's also kind of exciting because you get to learn a lot about everything, or just a little bit about everything, I should say. Like every day looks different, and you get to write about it. You get to meet new people. You get to go to new places, and it's taken me to places I've never thought I would ever go, like the EAA Oshkosh. I know
Oshkosh Festival.
I never thought I'd go to, an aircraft show in the middle of Wisconsin, and it was so cool. I got to talk to all of these people who've lived incredible lives,
Yeah.
and they were so emotional and so passionate. And I think there's such a privilege in that. You get to tell people's stories, and what other job do you really get to do that on a daily basis? I mean, I know there's lots of other jobs where it's similar, but to be able to just report it every day and it's different every day, it's so exciting. So that is absolutely a great part of it.
So at what point did you start to feel confident in your abilities as a reporter?
The half-year mark, I think, is when it started to feel a little bit more doable, because it's any job right after college is going to be difficult and challenging in its own ways. Especially you're just breaking into an industry. There's so many people and they know so much more than you, and that can make you feel so small. And I was struggling with that. And there was times I did live shots and I was so scared. I was like, I can't do this. But even over that period of time, this past year, I think you can kind of see the confidence in my reporting. You can see I feel a little bit more like I know what I'm talking about in my reports and in my newscasts. And that sort of turning point was like March, was the spring, sort of 7-ish months into the job, where the foundation was laid, and now I just have to work on my skills, and I just try to get better every day. And I had that confidence of, I know what I'm doing now.
Yeah, like the best way to learn how to do something is just getting thrown into it.
Throwing
I
it to it is the best way to describe it. It just feels like you just have to do it. You have to make the deadline. You gotta do it. You have a cold, you come in and you're not feeling the best. Something happened, you just gotta shake it off. You keep reporting, just dive into your story, find the interviews that you gotta get that day, get the angle that you're supposed to get, that is the most interesting, that is pressing, and that's what you focus on. Sometimes with film or any other, I think back to the projects I did in college with filmmaking, or with any other thing that was involved in those classes, and it was more up to what your own discretion of, you had certain criteria you had to hit, sure, but they kept it more open, like you be the type of filmmaker you want to be. And
yeah.
that's awesome, but it can also be daunting.
Yeah, I think there is a fine line between creative freedom and having structure, because you don't want to be so limited that you can't create the content that you want to create. But also restrictions can be good. They can help, generate more creativity. They can help
Right.
organize what you're trying to create so you can actually meet deadlines and get it out there. Um,
Sometimes you just like to have a prompt, so you can know, okay, all right, now that's my challenge, I can go do it, and it's kind of exciting.
yeah, it's like okay, yeah, it is like a little challenge. You're like, let me do this. Versus if there's too many options, it's almost overwhelming. So how would you define success then? I know it's a heavy question to nearly end on.
I think as a reporter, defining success as a reporter, I think, is to, do your story justice by telling it as honestly and as best as you can, finding the correct information, not only the correct information, but delivering it in a way that it connects with people, that the person you're saying all this information to can understand it, whether that's taking a bunch of numbers and turning them into, a contextual statistic that people can learn from, or if it's an interview where it was very hard to get and people watch it and they feel something from it and they're emotionally connected to it. Whatever it is, just do it with honesty, do it truthfully, and don't, let your, I guess, credibility be swayed by anyone or anything. Do honest work.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to get caught up in like status, or feeling like you need to hit certain milestones by certain ages. But I think if you're working a job that you believe in, if you're creating content that you're proud of, and if you get to make a living doing it, then you're the most successful person out there who can tell you that you're not, you know?
Right, exactly. If you're, you fix your mistakes because you're going to make them.
Yeah,
Not, oh,
been there.
I'm not successful because I pronounced something wrong 12 years ago. That's just not true. It's going to happen.
Yeah.
But just doing it as best as you can, and not shorting anybody or leaving things out because really don't want that in your story, or, there's some information, but telling every part of it that you need to tell, and to just do the best job that you can, and to do it honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, I know you went to a community college out of high school and then transferred to DePaul to study journalism. So I don't know. I feel like community college maybe has a stigma associated with it, but it's a way to save a ton of money. And I just thought it would be nice to point that out there to show that someone can be as successful as you are and start there, to maybe not dissuade people from doing that if that's something they feel like is a more practical decision for them. Do you want to talk about your decision to
Yeah,
do that at all?
that's so nice that you're saying like someone as successful as you, because really,
Because you are.
so I was so in your position though, like not long ago, just like being recently graduating to Paul and not really knowing. It's so easy to be, and I still am sometimes like, I don't know what my life path is, and I don't know what where I'm gonna go from here. But so that's very nice. Thank you for saying that.
Of course.
And I am such an advocate for community college. I have no shame around it. And, I got a great college experience. I made friends. I had roommates. I got the college experience. It was so exciting. And it was just, I spent a year at community college, saved so much money, and also figured out what I wanted to do at community college. Especially if you're like, I kind of don't know what I want to do. It was a great decision. I don't regret it at all. And I don't think anyone should ever be embarrassed. It's a resource. It's a smart resource.
Yeah, and you can still transfer. You can still start a career in the industry. It's never too late. Even if you didn't go to college, people can break into this industry all the time from all kinds of professions. One of my dad's flight students' brother works for a construction company and has started making documentaries in like West Virginia. So you can do anything and break into this industry if you
It is limitless. It is seriously limitless. Yeah.
It's scary, but also kind of comforting to know that
like
anyone can do it.
You're not restrained by thousands of dollars to go and do something that you want, really.
Is there any piece of advice you have for me or anyone else entering the industry, or any final thoughts you want to leave our listeners with?
Yes, don't settle. Do not settle at all. Like, if you feel like you're not totally happy, or there's something wrong and maybe you want to, do something different, so give it time. Give whatever job you're doing, give it time and due diligence. Like, make sure it's not just because you just started or you're scared, but spend time there. And then if if you feel like, I don't want to do this, I want to change it, don't be afraid, because there are so many opportunities, especially like, you just graduated. There's so much ahead of you. And I say that literally 1 year ahead of you. Just getting your first job, and I live by this, is the worst thing in the whole world. And then you get your first job in the industry you want, and it is 20 times better, because now you know people, and you maybe know someone who has a production company and they're kind of hiring in a couple months, and like all those like little connections. Like, Jenny, like, you will be fine. Like, it's just like, you'll do something to like make a little bit of money now to like pay the rent, and then you'll stumble across something, you'll find something that is in the field that you want, and you'll get there. You'd be surprised the amount of people who would just help you if you just ask and just reach your arm out for help. Someone will help you. There's good people. So
what an optimistic and inspirational sentiment to end it on. Well, thank you so much for speaking with me, Emily. Nadas thanks you. I'm excited to see you at Oshkosh next year.
Probably. Yeah.
Probably. Well, that was our conversation with Emily Reilly, the news reporter at WBAY Channel 2 in Green Bay. As someone who recently graduated and is looking for a stable job in this industry, it can be really overwhelming. And hearing someone who was in this position a year ago, who's now has their foot in the door and doing well for themselves, is definitely a relief. I really liked what she said about not being afraid to cold email people. I think especially younger people, us Gen Zers, we're really afraid of bothering people, or coming across as annoying, but you can never be too persistent, especially in a field that's competitive. So just don't be afraid to make those phone calls, to write those emails, to send out those applications, because you never know who's going to get back to you and where an opportunity is going to lie. And even if someone doesn't respond to you immediately, maybe they're going to have something in the future. And I really like the optimistic sentiment that she ended it on. I feel very inspired, and I hope anyone else are in the same position is feeling the same way after listening to it. This has been The Pursuit, a Nadas Junior Board podcast. Thank you guys for listening. Tune in next month for a new host and a new guest.